don't have an opinion about everything. And secondary or ancillary to that is not every hill is worth dying on. It's not worth fighting for. If you're not interested in whatever the subject is, you don't need to have an opinion about it. That's something I'm working on. I'm getting better at it with a little thought and a little maturity. So I'm really trying personally to make a conscious effort not to have an opinion about everything, or if I do, not really always feel the need to share it. Every man wants to be more secure in himself. It's not really a question of if he wants to be more secure, but how does he do it? We're constantly inundated and bombarded with our own feelings, our own emotions, things that trigger us, things that fire us up, things that make us mad, things that make us sad. And it seems like too often we as men are tossed to and fro by external sources, other people, the circumstances we might find ourselves in. And today I want to share with you how you can be more secure as a man, and also 5 ways to bolster your confidence. And I'm going to share those with you here in a minute. But before we get into it, I just want to tell you why this is so important. And it might be intuitive, you might understand, but it is crucial that we have a good understanding and knowledge as to why it's important that we do this. Number 1 is you're just going to feel better. You know, I talk with men every single day that are not feeling good about themselves. They're down on themselves. They're depressed. They're anxious, potentially even suicidal. If you want to feel better about who you are and how you're showing up, then your ability to be more secure is going to be a big indicator of that. Number 2 is you're going to build influence with other people. We've all been around emotionally reckless people. We've been around those people who are completely volatile, ups and downs and highs and lows, and that does nothing to garner the influence that they may otherwise have with us. The fact of the matter is that you want people to be influenced by you. And in many ways, you want them to like who you are as a person or a leader or a father or husband, or fill in the blank with your label of choice. But it is important that your kids are influenced by you. You're trying to lead them well. It is important that your significant other is influenced by you. Same thing with your clients and your employees and your employers and everybody else. This is antithetical to the common phrase and common mindset of, I don't care what anybody else thinks of me. Obviously, we ought to care about what some people think, and we need to build influence with those individuals. The third reason I think is so important is that when you build the type of confidence and security that I'll be addressing today, you are going to create more opportunities for yourself. This directly stems from your ability to be influential in people's lives. And when a client, for example, believes you to be secure and believes you to be in control of who you are and have the confidence that comes with it, a client, for example, might do more business with you, might be more apt to refer people your way. Maybe there's opportunities to go work with a different employer or someone else because that person sees you as a confident, capable man. So these are the reasons why it's so crucial that we learn to be more secure. Let's break this down into 5 steps. Number 1 is constantly working to validate yourself. It's very common for men to seek external validation. And we do it in a lot of different forms. It could be in the form of being validated by a woman or women. It could be validation in the form of physical possessions that somebody might compliment us about, or the amount of money that's in our bank account, or the praise and notoriety that comes with having 6-pack abs and the perfect physique. And there's nothing wrong with someone complimenting you. In fact, if somebody does compliment you, I suggest you say thank you. That means a lot to me, and then go on about your way. So it's not about ignoring or overlooking or rejecting or even rebuking somebody who might compliment you. It's the motive. Is your motive to get that from other people, or is the motive to do that for yourself? If you're getting it from other people, what ends up happening is that you as a man will work to manipulate others in order to get the validation that you want. You might say things a certain way, act a certain way that is out of character or not in alignment with who you are. It's very off-putting from a perspective of the other person. And it's counterintuitive, to at least counterproductive, I should say, to you being able to build influence with people. influence and respect and relationships are built on the backbone of trust. And if you're doing things to manipulate other people's behavior or response, eventually they're just not going to trust you and you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. So how do we validate ourselves? Well, by making commitments to ourselves and then honoring those commitments. It's really that simple. If you say tomorrow morning you're going to wake up at 5 a.m. and you wake up at 6 a.m., you're going to undermine your confidence. But if you get up at 5 a.m., even though you might be tired and want to sleep in and not want to get out of bed, that is going to help you just a little bit, a little sliver of help to build up and bolster the security that you have in yourself and the ability that you have to validate yourself, especially when things are hard. If you keep those commitments, you're going to know that you're a man that is a man of his word, that has integrity, that does hard things, that doesn't let external circumstance get in the way of him accomplishing his goals. The most successful people I know are the ones that keep commitments to themselves religiously, without fail, without exception. So, how do you know if you're seeking validation from others? And how do you know if you're trying to validate yourself? Well, think of your intent or your motive behind sharing the things that you share. So, for example, if you want to tell somebody about a successful day that you had at the office, is it so that you can brag and you can tell everybody and show everybody how wonderful you are? Or is there a lesson, for example, or story in there that you want to share with other people so they can learn from your success and apply it in their own life? Same story, right? Telling people about how successful the day was, but the motive is service to others, or the motive is service to self. So who is it that you're trying to serve? If it's other people, you can rest assured that you're probably not out there seeking validation. You're trying to be a value add to another person's life. Let's talk about point number 2, knowing who you are. It is amazing to me how many men do not know who they are. They don't know what drives them, what compels them, what motivates them, what scares them. We're acting on these scripts throughout our life without even knowing what the formula is. And there is a formula. Everything that you do and say and think and the way you behave is all a product of the stories that you either consciously or subconsciously have adopted in your life. And everything is a story. Some are more accurate than others, but there's no story that we have in our own lives that are entirely accurate because we have bad memories, we have biases, we have our emotions that tend to cloud and get in the way. So we've got stories that we've made up in our lives from the time that we were kids to the time right now. And every way that you behave is just a product of the stories you told yourself as a result of the circumstances you found yourself in, whether those were self-imposed circumstances or circumstances beyond your control. So when it comes to knowing yourself, a man who knows himself and knows what stories he's operating his life by is going to be more secure, partly because he's going to now give himself the control, the ability to write and craft stories that are more valuable in what he wants to accomplish. So, for example, let's say that you have been working with a company for the past 15 years. And the company's not doing very well, or maybe the economy's not doing well, and your employer comes to you and he says, hey, look, we're having a hard time right now. We have to do layoffs, and you're one of the people that we're going to have to lay off. Now, one story you might tell yourself in that situation is that the boss is out to get you, the economy's in the tank, nobody likes you, nobody appreciates you, nobody cares about you. These are all disempowering stories. An alternative story might be, this is an opportunity for me to go out and create something new, to try something different, to put myself in a better situation and opportunity. This is a moment of learning for me that if I ever find myself in this type of position again, maybe I do need to be more valuable to the organization. And maybe I need to work a little harder, a little smarter, be more creative. Or maybe I should start that business that I've always wanted to start, but have never given myself permission to do it. Same story, or same set of circumstances, but completely different stories. One is disempowering and one is empowering. Now, I'm not saying that we need to make the best of every situation and overlook the negative sides of losing a job, for example. But if you're going to make a story up, you might as well make up one that serves you. So what are your stories from the time you were little to you right now? Also, what triggers you? You know, what fires you up? What makes you mad? What are the things that really bother you? I feel like the more that we can put a face with the things that bother us, the less likely it is for those things to have power and control over us. It's when we don't identify those things. It's when we just let them work casually in the background that we get ourselves into trouble. I like journaling personally. Got my journal right here somewhere. There it is. So every day I'm writing something in here. Maybe it's a complete journal entry of my day, and maybe it's just a thought that I had or an after-action review that I've done on my own personal performance on this podcast, or an interview that I've done, or a conversation that I've had. But I'm constantly writing those things down in here because I want to know what makes me tick, what makes me who I am. And the more that I know that, the more secure I can be with who I am, and the more easily capable I am of figuring out what my weaknesses and flaws are and shoring those things up as well. Let's get into point number 3. Point number 3 is committing to boundaries. Guys, I've talked about boundaries so much, but boundaries in your life about the way that you will be treated, the way that people will show up, the expectation that you have at a base level for yourself and for other people, and the way they handle a relationship with you is crucial. And the fewer boundaries that you have, or also your inability to uphold your boundaries, is going to completely demoralize you. You're going to allow people to trample all over you. You're not going to be able to share your insights and thoughts. You're not going to be able to create opportunities for yourself. You're not going to be able to express yourself in a powerful way because you're letting other people treat you in a way that isn't conducive to your growth. This might be a relationship that you have, and maybe the woman in your life is verbally abusive, and the way she talks with you is not acceptable, but you just roll over because you think that's just what we ought to do, and you want to not rock the boat or, keep the marriage together. Or maybe a client berates you and belittles you because you made a simple mistake. Our inability to stand up in a respectful, appropriate way often will spell the difference between us being emotionally tormented, even doing it to ourselves, or emotionally secure. A man that says to somebody who mistreats him, hey, look, I know you're upset right now, but I refuse to be treated the way that I'm being treated right now. You can't tell me that guy is not going to walk around with a little bit more confidence and a little bit more swagger, knowing that he stood up properly to somebody who was trying to mistreat him. First, you need to know what your boundaries are. What will you tolerate? What will you not tolerate? Second, you also need to put yourself in a position where you have abundance in your life. So, for example, if you only have one client and that makes up 80, 90, 95% of your business, and that person berates you, the likelihood of you standing up to that person is probably pretty low because you don't want to run the risk of losing them. But if you have 1,000 clients and this one client makes up less than 1% of your revenue and they decide to berate you, you're okay to be able to stand up for yourself because it's not really going to have that great of an impact. If anything, it will have a positive impact on your book of business or your life in general. So create abundance and prosperity in your life. If you do that, you're more likely to put yourself in a good position when the thing actually needs to be said. Number 4, guys, I think we already talked about this a little bit, but it's just keeping your commitments even when you don't want to. Actually, I would probably say especially when you don't want to. Because keeping a commitment when it's easy for you is not a difficult thing, and it's not a character building thing. It's not wrong. It's a good thing, but it's not going to build any character. If, for example, you love to work out in the morning and it's not difficult for you to get out of bed and you go into the gym and you're excited and get your day off on the right path and you just love everything about lifting, for example, it's good that you honor that commitment, but it's not going to build any character because it's not hard for you. It comes natural. It's easy for you. But if, on the other hand, you've decided, hey, I'm going to go run a 5K or run a half marathon or run a marathon or an endurance event, and I want to prepare for this, but I hate running. I'm speaking about myself here. It's the commitment of training for running when you don't want to that's actually going to build the character. Or the commitment to have, let's say, for example, a difficult conversation with somebody. Maybe you and your wife are struggling and you need to bring up a conversation about the struggles and what's going on, but you keep kicking it down the road, hoping it'll get better. And some days it is and some days it isn't. But there's always this underlying tone of contention and friction in the relationship. But the commitment you made is to be able to have this conversation. You also made a commitment to be honest and truthful with her. So if you're holding back, then you're not being honest, you're not being truthful, and you're not honoring your own commitment. You have to do that and get back into integrity, because that's what's going to boost your security, your confidence, and the way that you feel about yourself. So keep those commitments. And if you're not going to keep the commitment, just don't make the commitment. Now, I'm not saying that as a permission slip for you never to make commitments in your life, because some people might read it that way. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is the commitments that you make, honor them and make sure those commitments are in alignment with the vision and desires you have for your life. Let's talk about number 5. This one's important. This is one that I'm personally working on, that I struggle with at times, but it's simply this: don't have an opinion about everything. And secondary or ancillary to that is not every hill is worth dying on. It's not worth fighting for. So you need to learn when to pick your battle, when to battle and when to retreat or withdraw. It's not even a retreat. If you're not interested in whatever the subject is, you don't need to have an opinion about it. That's something I'm working on. I'm getting better at it with a little thought and a little maturity, and also just being busy with other things. I don't have time to get involved in everything. So I'm really trying personally to make a conscious effort not to have an opinion about everything, or if I do, not really always feel the need to share it. I've never been accused of being a quiet person. I've never been accused of not having an opinion. I do. But I've found that the more that I can just not let things work me up, only the things that actually matter and are in alignment with my vision, the more focused I can be on that and the more secure that I am. I don't have as much of a need to fight and contend with people on subjects and interests and discussions that aren't relevant, exciting, or entertaining to me. So, like I said, that is something that I'm working on to varying degrees of success at different times in the day and throughout the week. But it is something I'm working on. And I found myself more secure when I can leave things alone that really aren't worth my time. So guys, I know this is kind of a quick list, kind of a rapid fire. This is how we do these Friday field notes, because I want you to just take some notes. And I really, every single week when I do these Friday episodes, I want to give you some homework, so to speak, something that you can actually grasp onto and do in your life and implement and make your life better. And that's what I would encourage you to do when you're listening to these Friday field notes, is take this information over the weekend, think about it, write some things down, take some notes, and then come up with an action plan on what you're going to do specifically in order to boost up your confidence and your security. So let me recap. Again, the benefits: you're going to feel a whole lot better about yourself, and that alone is invaluable. I know that there's days where, I have down days where I might struggle emotionally with certain things. Maybe it's my circumstances, or maybe I'm throwing myself a little pity party. It happens. But what I found is that those days are usually aligned with being out of integrity. Being out of integrity on conversations I need to have, being out of integrity by not waking up and going to the gym on time when I said I would, being out of integrity with the way the house or my office looks. Usually those bad and rough days are directly correlated with being out of order. So you're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to build influence. Sometimes when I talk about that, people have a hard time with that because they immediately assume that we're talking about some sort of manipulation strategy when we're influencing others. It's not what I'm saying at all. There's nothing negative about influence. There's also nothing inherently positive about it. We've all been influenced to do wonderful things. Maybe you listen to this podcast and it's causing you to start a business or go back into the gym or fill in the blank. That's positive influence. If it might be that, you hang out with some buddies and you decide to go get drunk, and maybe you drive around drunk and you end up getting in an accident, and heaven forbid you kill somebody. But there's been scenarios where a person is influenced to do that. So there's nothing moral or amoral inherently in influence. It's just really a matter of how you use it. And when I'm talking about influence, I hope you understand I'm talking about building positive influence so you can effectively lead and impact other people. And then the third is to create more opportunities. And don't we all want that? For me, for example, I want more podcast guests. I want more people to tune into this mission. I want to partner with other people that I respect and admire and look up to. And I do that by being secure in who I am as a man, knowing myself, and building up my confidence so I can in turn share that with other people. And then to recap the 5 ways, number 1, work to validate yourself. You don't have to prove anything to anybody else. And if you're trying to prove to your dad or your wife or your kids or random strangers on the internet how wonderful you are, that is a recipe for disaster. It's unnecessary. It doesn't work. And if anything, it undermines true confidence. It'll bolster your pride and your ego and your arrogance for sure. But it's not true confidence. Instead, work to validate yourself. Number 2, knowing who you are, knowing your stories, knowing where you come from, knowing what fires you up so you can actually combat against those things. Number 3 is committing to boundaries and keeping yourself out of trouble that way. When you have those boundaries in place and you keep those boundaries and you expect other people to keep those boundaries, man, you're like, it's like walking around with armor on. Like nothing can get at you. Nothing can impact you. Nothing can penetrate your armor when you're like that. Number 4, keeping your commitments even when you don't want to. I said especially when you don't want to. And number 5, you don't need to have an opinion about everything. And not every battle is worth you fighting for. Know the battles you want to fight. Know the battles you don't care about. And then act accordingly. Guys, I hope that helps. Being more secure is a beautiful thing. And I've had security in myself to varying degrees of success throughout my life. And sometimes I've been very secure, and other times a lot of insecurities creep in. And I'll tell you what, life's better when you can keep out the insecurities and build up the security in yourself. All right, guys, I hope that helps. Hey, one other thing I wanted to share with you is in May of next year, the spring, so May 1st through the 4th, spring next year, 2025, we're doing a really, really cool event. It's called The Forge, a gathering of men. And we're going to be doing this just outside of St. Louis with me, Larry Hagner with the Dad Edge, Connor Beaton with Man Talks, and Matt Boudreau with Apogee Strong. I would love for you guys to be there. We don't have very many spots, so if you are interested and want to watch a video about what it's about and get the details, head to themensforge.com, themensforge.com. All right, guys, those are your marching orders. Think on that this weekend. Apply what you've learned. Make yourself a better man. We'll be back next week. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.